Marfoogle News going live in 3, 2, 1. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam A.K. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. We're going to talk about the asteroid, and I just want to point out, I did a video on this about a week ago when it was up to 2.3%. It kept getting raised up to, it was at 1.3, then 1.6, then 1.9, then 2.3. It has raised again to 2.6, and before I got a chance to even tell you that, it is now raised again. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. And again, this is the same day that it was brought out. China announced that they are going to be not only creating, but making one of the world's largest planetary defense systems. So we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But first of all, Doge says that it dug up another 1.9 billion. Yes, that's right, billion. In taxpayer money misplaced by the last administration. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, the Elon Musk group tasked with eliminating wasteful spending, on Friday said that it found another $1.9 billion that was misplaced by the JB administration. The funds were from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which no surprise there. And it says the $1.9 billion of HUD money was just recovered after being misplaced during the JB administration due to a broken process. These funds were earmarked for the administration of financial services, but were no longer needed. Again, the direct quote, they says, "We will be very detailed and deliberate about every dollar spent in serving tribal, rural, and urban communities across America." So there's a lot of different funds that they are finding that they are going to grab back. Now, over social media, everybody is asking, like, hey, are we going to all get a refund or something? Because of all of this money is being found. What is it going to be used for? I have a side theory, but I'll talk about that later over on Marfoogle TV. Now, before we continue, I do want to remind you, there's a lot of stuff that you should be seeing over on that next show, too, as far as what's going on. But I would highly recommend going over and checking out marfooglenews.com/EMP. This is a device that can actually protect your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators, solar and gas, and even your home and even your ham radio against not only EMP strikes from an adversary, but a Carrington-level event from the sun. This is the same company that is now outfitting agencies like DHS, DOD, and of course the Dempsey team with the Texas Grid. If you haven't seen these before, again, they are incredibly useful in either of these situations. Again, it's something that you won't be using until you need it, and once you need it, you are going to thank yourself for getting it. This means the difference of you being stuck somewhere 30 miles from home, or, of course, being stuck at home and trying to get out. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP and make sure to use the code MARF. You not only support our independent news, but you get $50 off per device. So if you're outfitting multiple cars or a mixture of a generator, home, and a car, whatever it may be, that also stacks on top of each other and, of course, on top of sales. All right. And we are independent. Again, we are completely on our own. So thank you guys for your support. All right, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine. You know, they say that they're up to 110 billion in savings on that Doge effort, which is something like $600 in every taxpayer's pocket. $700.
Well, and also he at one point when Elon was in that office, he said that they may find close to $1 trillion. We don't know if that's going to happen. Then he mentioned, at least $500 billion. I guess we'll see what ends up happening with it. And then the reality of nuclear EMP attack, why the U.S. needs to be prepared. Dex, do you want to cover this?
Yeah, so we mentioned this on our other show, but look, this guy, William Forstchen, he is the New York Times best-selling author. He's a historian. He talks a lot about, writes a lot of the, doomsday type thrillers, but a lot of them are, specifically around real type events. He was on Fox, and he went into a great detail about the threat of EMPs, which I know you guys know about because we talk about it all the time here. So I won't go all into the details and the minutia of that because we've covered it ad nauseum. But The interesting thing he does talk about that I think is worth discussing is he did mention that he thinks that the this current administration or Trump is going to bring back the efforts because he signed those executive orders in the last administration in the prior term he was in. The Biden administration completely ignored them and did nothing with them. And he's expecting it to come back because there is this looming threat. And we've talked about what's been going on with Russia up in space. And then he also goes and describes about how he thinks what they're building with this Iron Dome, which isn't the literal Iron Dome, but they're using that as a name to describe a missile defense system for America, because it's going to be totally different. And that he's explaining that would most likely be to prevent something like EMPs, because that threat is still very real to this day, because it doesn't require a very large nuke. It requires a very small nuke, but just up at a high altitude.
And again, it was very suspicious that everyone agreed at the time that the executive order was signed back in, I think, 2018 by President Trump. Essentially, both sides agreed. It was something that on both sides of the aisle, everyone agreed that they needed to harden the grid. So when the last admin, which again, a lot of people had certain nicknames for him that essentially tied back to Xi Jinping, everybody was very suspicious when he basically didn't get rid of the executive order. He did not unsign it. He did not undo it. But yet they essentially put it at a snail's pace. It was almost like they were like, let's put that on pause, keep that vulnerable for now. And it was very odd because it essentially stopped everyone from doing their work. A lot of it basically froze. So in a lot of ways, they slowed it down to a snail's crawl. That's very weird, if you ask me. And then, Dex, do you want to talk about federal Judge McConnell? And then I'll be talking about the asteroid.
So this is another interesting thing being brought to light from all of the investigations around the efficiency and the potential corruption, as they were labeling it. But in this particular case, they have, and this is America First League, it's legal, I should say, have said they've uncovered a major conflict of interest with one of the judges. You know, there's been a handful of judges that have been trying to stop these things or putting in orders to stop these things. Specifically, this one was the temporary spending freeze. Well, apparently, the same judge who is who has made that freeze apparently has ties and positions to organizations that have been getting the money from those funds that he's saying to unfreeze. So that's the allegation here. You guys can go look into the details of it if you want. But, you know, it's not surprising the way our government works. And I think it really, you know, brings to light everything from all branches of our government ought to be, you know, looked at thoroughly. We know there's a ton of corruption in the House and the Senate, and even in presidencies. But, you know, it's still there in the judicial branch as well.
Now, he might, it said, there's a little piece down here. Republicans have mounted a vigorous attack against a district court nominee whose family donated nearly $700,000 to Democratic candidates. Can you imagine, like, $700,000 just donating that to a candidate, something like that? I mean, that in itself says a lot of power, where you're donating that, essentially asking for something back at some point, right? What's crazy is that's how they're initially rich in the first place. Because if you look at this, it's like all that money was going back through. You think that they're not getting a personal chunk of change of that? There's probably a reason why DC's searches have skyrocketed through the roof for criminal lawyers, offshore accounts, Swiss bank accounts. I mean, it's not rocket science here. People were getting kickbacks. At least that's my opinion. Again, this is very crazy. But $700,000. Some of us, you know, that's 5, 6, 7 years of work, and they're just giving it away to a candidate. And of course, obviously for a reason. They're you know, it's so they can ask for a favor back later.
Yeah, and one of the specific ones is they claim that he is on the board of what's called Crossroads Rhode Island. And that organization, he's on the board of. He's been on the board listed every year on the IRS statements, even since he's taken the bench, and has received $128 million in government funding.
Well, Wait, not him, right? Or the agency he was the board of.
The
right?
the organization that he's the board of.
So, and again, how does he have $700,000 extra to donate, right? As a judge, I know they get paid well, like really well, but I'm sure they don't get paid better than the president, and the president doesn't make the kind of money on their official salary to donate that kind of money. I mean, that's crazy. It's all of the side money. All right, now bringing us to our main story. This is, I'm telling you, this is going to just keep going up. And for those of you that say that all of a sudden there's a big kind of call saying that somebody said that there's a 2027 hoax coming, you very well may be right. And this may be the seeds of it. But one thing I will say is I've been saying this for close to 9 years. And when Sunspot Observatory happened, I said something was weird about this. Some people said it was aliens that shut down Sunspot Observatory. Of course, that story I have a previous video about. Just look up Sunspot. Even use AI to use it. It actually shows you more of the accurate stuff of a timeline rather than the articles, which have been altered. There's been, if you go into the Wayback Machine and look at articles, they've been changed to make it sound better. But essentially, this guy had stuff on his computer, one janitor at the Sunspot Observatory. So they came in with Black Hawk helicopters, landed in, shut down the whole neighborhood, evacuated houses. They closed down the post office, which, again, I think is because they were checking to see if anything was sent out. And they said this was all for one janitor. And that's because the janitor said that there was a serial person who was around and he was going to take everybody's life. And they shut it down for 11 days. Didn't make much sense, right? And they said that it was to clean out the computers and stuff like this, and that he was using a government network, and that's how they found him and all of that. I didn't believe that. And again, it's a subject that nobody wants to talk about at their water coolers. So of course, the story kind of just ended right after the 11-day period, and nobody really talked about it much. Well, I thought it was because maybe it's Sunspot Observatory, that it's pointed towards the sun and it can see exactly where almost every expert says that we would get an unexpected asteroid from, because we can't see in that direction. And again, during that, all of a sudden they treated it almost like straight out of a disaster movie where, oh, this person found it. Oh, well, we got to keep this secret. We can't tell the people. They'll panic. And then all of a sudden now we're getting more and more word of these kind of events. Now, this 2024 YR4 started out at 1.2%, then went up to 1.3, then went up to 1.6, then it went up to 1.9, then went up to 2.3%. And I was just texting Ilea today, and she's like, well, wasn't that what we saw last week? And I said, no, that was 2.3%. Today, it went up to 2.6%. And now it is rised again up to 3.1%, which that last rise, to put that in perspective, let me show you what that actually means in odds that it's going to hit. It's actually, it's crazier than you think because let's see here. Let me show you this. So this is before it raised to 3.1%. So December 30th, 0.96%, 1 in 1,000. It goes up to 1.2%, 1 in 83 chance, 1 in 53 at 1.9, 2.3%, which we talked about last week, was 1 in 43, and 2.6 was 1 in 38. So at 3.1 is another 0.5. It's probably 1 in 35 or something. All of a sudden, we're getting into the territory of like, hey, I might win this lottery ticket, This is very, very creepy that it just continues to go up. Now, this is not a world killer. This is not a extinction level event, but this is almost exactly the size from the movie Greenland. If you've seen the movie Greenland, they said that it was a football field sized object in the very first part of that movie, when they're all sitting at the party and the object hits Tampa, Florida, and basically wipes out Tampa to Orlando. That is the size object that hit in that movie, and they actually used scientists to try to do the best job they could of making it look legit, like what would happen. They had consultants, and they said this is how fast it was going, and this is how big of an area it would destroy. So this is anywhere from, I think they said 220 to 330 feet. And in fact, experts have said they are tracking it and they're looking at it with different radars to see if it's even bigger. So at the very least, it's a city killer. This is something that would take out New York in a flash, right? And it's just very odd. If you look at the events over the years, something just does not sit right. Why does this just continually go up? If it keeps going on this pattern, which I said at 2.3%, and that was after that day it went up from 1.9, then shoot, we'll be at 10%, then 15%, then 50%. I mean, this is insane. Keep in mind, at the current 3.1, it's at least above a 1 in 38 because that was at 2.6%. It's very, 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 very odd. The probability that the major asteroid big enough to wipe out an entire city is 1 in 32. So that's getting into creepy territory. On February 7, NASA increased the likelihood that the asteroid 2024 will hit Earth in 7 years' time from 1.2% to 2.3% odds of impact. Now, I know that everybody's saying never a straight answer, that they don't ever tell the truth. Well, that would make sense because if they did find out about this a long time ago, or if they discovered it technically before whoever discovered it in 2024, then it would make a whole lot of sense. And why, over just a few days, why do they just keep increasing it? It's like they're just trying to kind of put the seeds in and just do it a little bit at a time so you get it used to it. And everyone has been talking about this for the last week now. It has the diameter of, they say now, 177 feet, or as wide as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But while it's too small to end human civilization, the asteroid could wipe out a major city, releasing about 8 megatons of energy upon impact, more than 500 times the energy released during the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, Japan. So incredibly, incredibly powerful. And then get this. This is something that was added. Do you remember the moon video? Do you remember the military gentleman who said, no, it's not going to hit Earth. They think it's going to hit the moon. And if it hits the moon off of its axis, then we're all screwed. Do you remember that? All of a sudden, and I said years ago, watch we find out that something is going on. And he said that it would be in the future, around 2030, 2029. It says that now it has a 0.3 chance that YR4 will hit the moon instead of Earth. I just think that that's incredibly weird, especially if this is not the only one. Now all of a sudden we have an actual official story coming out that says that an asteroid might not only hit Earth, but it actually has a small chance of hitting the moon. Now, a lot of asteroids hit the moon, but not many of them are this big. Again, could that affect it? I don't know. But the moon is definitely a lot smaller than the Earth. And something like this, could it put it off of its axis or screw up everything? Because the moon controls our tidal waves and everything else. I don't know what's going on, but this matches up with all of the events we've talked about over the years. If you've watched for a long time, then you're scratching your head going, holy crap. All of the events, including the same day that this came out, all of a sudden China starts a planetary defense and says that they are basically putting billions and billions of dollars into all of a sudden creating impactors that can go and smash into asteroids. Something does not sit right, and I'm telling you, I've been saying it for years, and now all of a sudden there's more and more verification of what many of us have seen as obvious, like something's going on. And think about all of the land grabs that are going on. Think about how now all of a sudden our president wants Greenland. Again, did you know about Camp Century? Because Greenland, the movie, of course, that's a fictional movie. But there really is an underground facility there. It's called Camp Century, and it was actually rediscovered after during war times. They actually had an underground city, this underground place. Not much is known about it, but they actually rediscovered it with radar. And they have been trying to rediscover it ever since, right? And that is in Greenland. So I think it's very, very odd that we are trying to reacquire Greenland. They say it is because of war, but of course Russia's trying to get Ukraine. If you look at every place that somebody's trying to grab, they have one thing in common at least. Almost all of them have huge, vast underground tunnels and underground systems. Look up Guyana, look up Ukraine, look up Taiwan, look up all of these places. They've got natural features that allow them to have people down underneath. I don't know. It very well could be just tying the wrong things together. But you let me know in the comments down below. I will love to hear and read your comments. Thank you guys for joining us for this short. Again, we're going to head over to the main show over at Marfoogle TV. And again, there's a lot of really, really important stuff on there. We're going to, of course, talk about armed forces in Mexico. One step at a time, we are heading right into the fire pit. So join us for that. Again, you can go over to marfooglenews.com. You can find every single article, tweet, video, picture, document over at marfooglenews.com. All right, you guys, see you in just a minute. If you're in the chat, just stay there. You'll be ported over. If you're watching the replay, just click here.